Hi everyone, welcome to another exciting edition of Words, Images, and Worlds. Delighted on this episode to be talking with longtime comics creator Bob Rozakis. Bob, may I call you Bob? Is that all right?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Thank you for joining. Thank you
I
for
wore my
jumping
Bob
in.
shirt, so just in case.
Fantastic. Yes, yeah. Um, Thank you for also being willing to use the video because you have a wonderful shelf behind you. Mine is digital. It's total fake, but yours
Uh,
is it looks real and it looks
Mine
like
is
they're
is
wonderful
it
books.
definitely. Let me see if I can shine the light on it a little more there. Well, most of what
Love
you
it.
can see there is DC archives and things like that. Variety of souvenirs and things from my days in the business, plus pictures of my kids and my grandson and that kind of stuff.
All the important things. All the
Yes.
important
Yeah.
things.
Well, that's only one third of the bookcases in this room. There's another one over here and another one over there, and they're both well stocked with comics related, um, mostly hardcovers, but trade paperbacks too.
Love it. Love it.
So,
Well, that's a perfect intro for the first question, which is what in your view, as somebody that's worked in the medium, makes comics a unique way of telling stories or a special way of telling stories?
well, I think it's open to anything in your imagination. I mean, now with computer generated uh, effects and things, I mean, what they can do in movies and TV shows is much more complex than
Hmm.
they could do back in the days when I started reading comics and then got into comics because you know stop action dinosaurs really wasn't you know it was impressive when you were watching it because you wouldn't see anything else. But I mean the avenues open to comic book writers and artists was just limited by your own imagination.
Hmm.
I'm thinking back just uh, one of the things like the surreal backgrounds that Steve Ditko did in the Doctor Strange stories and things like that, that you look at and say, oh, well, how would they do that? Today they can do it with CGI easily, but the kinds of things that he came up with, just as backgrounds for the nether realms and that kind of thing were quite impressive. And then just the
Phenomenal.
amount of things you could do in terms of creating aliens. Look at the aliens we had, the different kinds of aliens we had in comics versus the aliens in the first generation of Star Trek.
Hmm.
You know,
Hmm.
they were basically humanoids or somebody with a lizard suit on.
Right.
You
Yep.
know,
The image comes to mind immediately. I'm thinking V now.
so yes,
Yeah.
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 When I wrote a couple of the Star Trek comics for DC, I was able to put in some alien creatures on the crew that would not have appeared in the even in next gen at that point. I mean, what did they have? Data was a robot or an
Hmm.
android.
Hmm.
They really and the Klingons, but
Yeah.
that was it. Everybody had to basically be humanoid.
You diversified the crew even more. Love it. Now, I was going to ask about some characters that you created that you're known for, particularly in the world of Batman. And um, I think the question I had was something like, how does it feel to have made this mark, to have created these characters that are now part of the lineage? One of those being Duell Dent. The other one that comes to mind is the Calculator. So Batman is known for this legendary rogues gallery. So just curious what it's like to have contributed a couple of those names.
Um, it's very interesting because when I created them, it was to fill a niche and run a story or a series of stories. And with the calculator, the whole premise was he was going to battle each one of the different heroes.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I came up with that idea because I knew I could lock in the backup spotted Detective Comics for like 6 months
Yeah.
with Julie Schwartz by saying, well, first he fights the Atom, and then he's going to fight Black Canary, and it went through all the characters Julie had used as the backups in in Detective. And he was like, okay, okay. I said, and then he fights Batman. And that was my way to get to write a Batman story in
Love
Detective
it.
Comics. As it turned out, I ended up writing the issue before um, the Batman lead, as well as the Batman and Calculator and Hawkman story. Um, so, and I had written the 3 part Captain Stingery Batman stories with Michael Uslan. We collaborated on
Mm-hmm,
that.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Um, Captain Stingery was not a name that Michael or I came up with. It was actually Julie's idea. I think we wanted to call him the Buccaneer or something like that. Captain Cutlass. And Julie was like, no, Captain Stingery. Like, okay, you're the editor.
You work with it when the editor says so, right?
He says that's what it is. It's like, okay, that's what it is. So,
Yeah.
but I was quite surprised to see Duella end up being basically the lead character in Gotham Knights
Hmm.
last year. Uh, I mean, when I created her initially, it was okay. Robin needs a regular foe, and rather than having one, it'll be the same girl pretending to be the daughter of all the different characters. And then we decided, nah, there's enough interest in her, and so we turned her into a member of the Titans.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
By pointing out that, well, no, she never really committed any crimes.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and, uh,
And she's continued to be part of the comics landscape since then, which is a
yeah,
very cool thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
much maligned for quite a while. There were
Mhm.
other writers who just said, no, she's just some wacko. Uh, Marv Wolfman and George Perez, I think, particularly hated her.
Ah,
But now I can just say, Neener, Neener, look, she made it to TV.
that's right. That's right. And an interesting character, interesting psychology there too.
Mhm.
Both of those characters are very psychological, and also to write a Batman story in that way, that was very calculating on your part as well. That was a master plan kind of thing.
Mhm. Yeah, it was that we competed. Those of us who were coming into the business, was the fanboy generation. We were
Mhm.
competing with one another to get the spots to write this or write that. And if we came up with a way that would be, oh, I get the next 6 issues or something.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
okay.
Now, you mentioned a couple of names there, Julie Schwartz, Marv Wolfman, George Perez. Curious about, I always like to ask about the best people, the best collaborators in the industry that you found, some of the best experiences and connections that you were part of.
Well, I'll start with Julie. Julie really was my mentor, and he's the one that got me into DC. Um, when I went up to visit him, I love to tell the story. I called up DC one time. I wanted to go visit the offices, and I called their main number and asked for Julie. And I really thought it was like calling the White House and saying, "Can I talk to the president?" And you just get a secretary. And instead, I got Julie, and I was like, "Oh." And I told him, he knew who I was. I'd been writing letters for years, and he'd been publishing them, so he knew my name. And so he said, "Sure, come on up." And so I came up to visit, and I had been doing making up crossword puzzles and
Hmm.
word
Hmm.
find puzzles for a couple of fanzines, and I brought them along, figuring that Nelson Bridwell would enjoy them because it was basically trivia stuff, and Nelson was into that. And Nelson shared the office with Julie, so I came in. Julie got a phone call, and while he was on the phone, I handed Nelson the puzzles. I said, "I think you'll enjoy these." And Julie hangs up the phone. He looks at them and grabs them. He says, "What's this?" And I said, "They're some puzzles that I made up." He said, "Stay right here," and he ran out of the room. And I was like, "Well, I'm not going to go anywhere. I'm here at DC Comics."
Hmm.
And he came back about 5 minutes later with Saul Harrison, who at the time was the vice president and production director. And Saul said, "You made these up on your own?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Could you make up ones just about Superman and Batman?" And I said, "Sure." He said, "Okay, we'll buy them." And it was like all
Nice.
of a sudden I'm a DC Comics freelancer. So I came back about a week later. I had three Superman puzzles, three Batman puzzles, and three Justice League puzzles. And this was back before you could use a computer to generate the grids or anything else. It was all done on graph paper, and I had to draw all the lines.
Oh,
And then
wow.
I had this press type that was individual numbers and letters, and you had to put them into the spaces. And I mean, it took forever
It
because you
sounds.
make a grid that's 15 by 15 of letters, that's a word find,
Hmm.
and you've got to put all of them in there.
Hmm.
You do
Hmm.
a crossword puzzle, and you got to do two grids because one of them has to have the numbers with the blank spaces, but then you also need the answers.
Yep.
So you got to go through then the second time and now put all the answers into it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and I got the whopping sum of $15 a page for
Wow.
those puzzles, and so I made what, $90?
Hmm. Hmm.
No, nine, no, $135. My first DC check for the nine puzzle pages. And before the first one appeared, I was still a senior in college at the time, and I got a phone call, and it was Saul's secretary, Midge, and she said, "Saul wants to talk to you." And I said, "Okay." And I get on the phone. He says, "What do you know about Tarzan?" And I had been reading. I started reading all the Burroughs stuff about a year earlier, so I was pretty well versed in all the different, not just Tarzan, but John Carter and the Pellucidar and the rest of them.
Hmm.
I said, uh, I know pretty much a lot about him. He says, "I need three Tarzan puzzles right away." And this was like a Friday afternoon. I said, "Well, how right away?" He says, "Like Monday." I said, "Okay." So
There's your weekend.
spent the weekend. I did a word find, a crossword puzzle, and I think the third one was a maze. Mazes at least were fairly easy because I could, just lay them out on the graph paper and draw the lines where everywhere except where I needed the space.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
trace out the whole path on the thing and then go back and fill in all the lines. But and those actually appeared first because they went in the first Tarzan tabloid
Oh,
collection that
wow.
they did. So,
Nice.
and then I graduated from college, and I had a choice of going into accounting, which was what my degree was, or asking Saul for a job. And so I figured, well, I'll ask Saul for a job. And I was hired as an editorial assistant. And after about six, not even 6 weeks, I would say 4 weeks, that was the year that Saul was experimenting with the comic mobile,
Hmm.
um,
Hmm.
which was the whole concept, like Mr. Softy, or going up and down the street selling comic books instead of ice cream. And Michael Uslan was the first driver, and he was doing it down where he lived in Central Jersey, and I live on Long Island, and so Michael was going back to college, and Saul said, "Well, you're going to go get the comic mobile, and you're going to drive it around Long Island," which entailed having to get a vendor's license for each of the townships on Long Island, and they all had different rules. Michael in New Jersey was able to take the comic mobile and park in a parking lot by the parks or the beaches or in front of a school. In Nassau and Suffolk County on Long Island, I couldn't go near the beaches, the parks, the schools. I was pretty much restricted to driving up and down streets, ringing a bell like the ice cream man, and having kids come out, expecting to buy a creamsicle, and instead, no, you could buy Superman.
I would
So,
take Superman over the creamsicle, personally.
yeah,
That's me.
it was a one summer experiment. Michael and I gathered quite a bit of research in terms of what the kids found popular, what sold, what on a cover attracted interest. Dinosaurs were particularly big
Mm-hmm.
um, on a cover. The Joker was quite popular, and it led to a couple of Batman and the Joker team ups in Brave and Bold, and the Joker actually getting his own comic book for about a year and a half or so, a few years later. And then there were other pieces of information that they just basically ignored. It would be like, yeah, but they really like this. No, forget it.
There's something else with that.
Yeah, but it was an interesting time. Then I came back and worked in the office. I was editorial assistant and then assistant editor with Julie,
Mm.
and then had a brief foray as a an editor, and then moved into the production department. I was in the production department from 1976 till I left in '98. So
Wow.
I was the head of the production department from '81 to '98.
Was there any particular talent that came in there that you kind of got to shepherd and support that then went on and you, sort of the
Um,
pride in their journey kind of thing? Or
Stephen
maybe opposite
DeStefano
direction.
comes to mind. Stephen was
Uh-huh.
the co-creator of Amazing Man and Hero Hotline. He started out writing letters to me when I was doing the Answer Man column,
Mm-hmm.
and he would write me these long pages and pages of loose leaf paper, handwritten letters. And then on the last page, he'd draw a cartoon of him and his dog or whatever. And I'd look at these pictures, and I was like, "This kid's got real artistic talent." And so when he was 15 or 16, we got him a summer internship working at DC. And as he said, he learned the fine art of Xeroxing. But he did take advantage of it and used the time to show his artwork and get feedback from the editors and the artists that were coming in. And then
Nice,
he
nice.
had the idea for Amazing Man, and the two of us collaborated in putting it together.
Love it.
So that was a lot of fun. And he's gone on. I just saw recently online he won an Emmy for I think it was some Popeye things that he did, but some animation thing. He won an Emmy.
Very cool. Very
Yeah.
cool.
So, um, but there have been plenty of artists and writers that I've worked with over the years. I can take pride in saying that the Marshall Rogers, Terry Austin Batman,
Mm.
the first time was actually by Calculator Story. That's their first Batman story, not the Steve Englehart ones. So
That's
if
also
not for the
cool.
last chapter of the Calculator story, the two of them wouldn't have teamed up. So
Nice.
Marshall had been doing the backups, so he did the previous chapters of the Calculator story in Detective. And so when it came time for the Batman one, it was like, well, we want Marshall to do it. And Vinnie Coletta was the art director at the time. He said, I don't think he's ready. And we were like, no, we really think he can do it. And so we got Vinnie to relent, and
Mm.
Marshall got to do it. And then, but 2 issues later, he started with Englehart on the run in Detective.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Comics history.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You also, I was going to ask because comics and film were like right there with me as
Mm-hmm.
far as reading something, seeing the film, then going back to it. So I was going to ask about Superman movie adaptation that you did, that you worked on.
Superman 4.
Yes, uh-huh, uh-huh. What was that experience like for you? And I'll say, as a comics fan, it's hard for me to dislike a comics movie. I'm just going to put that out there as well.
Well, I got to read the original script.
Uh-huh.
And so there were things that were in the script that were not finally in the movie. There was a whole nother version of the nuclear man before the one that appeared in the movie. And they had a whole sequence where he was basically a bizarro kind of nuclear man because he was
Mm.
a defective creature. And they eliminated that completely. Um, and some of the other things that they did in the movie, I had to correct. I mean, there was one sequence where it was daytime in London, Metropolis, and China all at the
Nice.
same time. And I said, this doesn't work.
That's some spinning
And
around the globe action right
yeah,
there.
it was like, okay, the world is spinning too fast. It can't be daytime in all three places at the same time. And
Yeah.
so, I had to modify that. And then I think they had the Superman's fix the Great Wall of China vision that, he used to put the Great Wall of China back together.
Hmm.
And it was like, no, he doesn't have that power. And so in the comic book, he just uses his super speed and puts it all back together. But there were some other equally bizarre science facts that really didn't make any sense in the movie that I at least tried to move into. Okay, this would work in the comic books,
Hmm. Hmm.
and comic book fans will not go, oh my god, what is this?
So you get to make some on the spot edits as you were creating.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, and of course I didn't know what was going to end up in the final script because they were changing things as obviously as they were filming, and
Hmm.
all I had was the early version, and I think I probably had the other nuclear man in the script, and then we found out, oh well, he's not in the movie, so take that out. So, but it was fun. I got to do a couple of other movie adaptations as well. I did the adaptation of Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure,
Very nice. I do remember reading that. Yes, I do. Uh-huh.
and also Rainbow Bright and the Star Stealers.
I did not read that one, but I'm sure it's excellent.
Well, it was close to the movie script. Let's just leave it at that.
Yes, yes. Well, I think I have one more official question for you, and that
Okay.
is official creative directions now, things that you're exploring at the moment, as well as spaces where people can connect. And creative directions could be things that you're working on comics wise. One guest the other day told me he was building an addition on his house, so there's a broad definition here.
Well, I'm working my way through all of these books that I have accumulated over the years.
Love
I
it.
retired from a full-time job in 2015, so I've had now 8+ years to work my way through a lot of the books that I've accumulated. There's still plenty more to go because there's also more and more of them coming out
Hmm. Hmm.
that I
Hmm.
say, oh, I really want that. And
Yes.
my wife says, well, if you're gonna get a new one, get rid of one. And it's like, well, no, I can't really do that anymore. But I have actually sold off some of my collection of regular comics, um, because they're all in hardcovers or trade paperbacks, and it's my son was interested, and he said, well, I want those. And I said, but are you going to read them? He said, well, no, I'll read the collections. I said, so better we should sell them, and we'll put the money in the college fund for my grandson,
That's
and
right. That's
you
right.
still have the stuff to read. So that I've been doing. I've been teaching a class in the history of comics and graphic novels
Oh,
for
love
the
it.
last 5 years at Farmingdale State College, and that's a lot of fun. So I start with the early comic strips and into the comic books, and um, a lot of it is focused on DC and Marvel
Mhm.
and the superheroes, which are the mainstay. But when we get certainly to the 90s and into the 21st century, it's a much wider view
Mhm.
as far as graphic novels and things like that. And their biggest assignment is they have to pick two graphic novels and do a presentation to the class on them. And they're like, well, but are there specifics? I said, no, you can use anything you want. And every semester I end up with a list of 10 or 12 or 15 that I haven't read or haven't heard of. And it's like, oh, I'll read this, I'll read that.
Love it.
And thankfully the library system in Nassau County, you can access books from any of the 58 libraries. And
Mm-hmm.
so I can go online and say, oh, I want this, and oh, it's in that library, and they'll send it right to the local library, and I can pick them up. And it's gotten to the point where the librarians, when I go in with the list, they're like, "Ah, your class did their presentations, did they?" Every November and May, I just show up with a list of, okay, I'm going to read this and I'm going to read that. And, some of them I've agreed with the students on. Yeah, this is really good, and some of them it's like, nah, maybe it relates to you at age 20. It doesn't relate to me.
hmm
So,
hmm Yeah.
but it's a lot of fun.
Well, shout out to teaching. Teaching is very creative work, and a solid librarian is a good support to have as
Oh,
well. Totally.
absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
And,
What's next on the reading list?
what am I reading right now? I just got, I got this,
Ah, very nice.
the first of these, and I've been advised that coming next is the Joe Manili collection that they're putting out. Um, and I just finished a book by Lou Moglin about secondary action heroes in the Golden Age. Um,
Nice.
he had done one a few years ago on the second string, and they're really third and fourth and fifth string superheroes of the Golden Age. This one is on the westerns, the science fiction, um, and jungle heroes. So
Wonderful.
it's an interesting book, and a lot of it I find little tidbits of information that I can work into the class and just say, oh, and this is because this happened and kind of thing. And I actually added after I saw his first book a whole PowerPoint presentation on the second and third string heroes.
Nice.
And one of the assignments I do is I have this random generator system where it's okay, you get the first half and the second half of the names of a superhero. So it could be, Captain Freedom or Major whatever. And so it's like, okay, you've got the two halves. Now you're going to make up the character. You're working for Cheapo Charlie's comic book company, and all he does is, I got a name for a character, make him up. And so
Nice.
they have to come up with the whole origin and the background and the powers of this particular character. And it's all everybody gets a different one.
I
So
may
it's
have to
it's a
steal that
lot of fun.
idea. That's a great idea.
It's a lot of fun. They just you just go down the list until you got the crimson and the major and the colonel and captain and blah blah, and then disaster, power, you know ghost. uh, so they have a lot of fun with it, and that's
Awesome.
really what I try to do in the class is just make all the writing assignments are fun. It's like, okay, you know let's see what we can come up with. And we talk about Cheapo Charlie and his comic book company. I give them a blank page, a not a blank page, a page of artwork with all the balloons whited out. And it's like, okay, Cheapo Charlie bought this page of artwork. He needs three different stories using the same page. So they have to come up with sets of dialogue that tell three different parts of three different stories that are unrelated.
Oh, I love it.
And
Love it.
then I take a bunch of Golden Age and Silver Age covers, the same kind of thing where, this story could be anything. And it's like,
hmm
all right, Cheapo Charlie's at it again. He's got this cover. He needs three different stories, and they have to come up with three different plots to go that, well, it could be this or it could be that, it could be this. So it's a lot of fun. They have a lot of fun, which is, the best part, I guess,
Yeah,
especially since the class runs on Friday nights from 6 till 8:30.
you got to keep
Uh,
it fun. Yes.
yes. But you also have to want to take the class if you're going to take a class on a Friday night from 6 to 8:30.
True
So,
enough.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, Bob, thank you for the work you've done in comics. Thank you for the work you're doing in teaching. That sounds amazing, and I'm stealing ideas already for my classes coming up.
Okay.
And thank you for the time as well.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, pleasure to talk with you.